get Rex Brandstatter with Senior Talk. This is brought to you by the Solon American Legion. Hello, Rex.
Hello, good afternoon, Molly. How are everybody out there? Thanks for joining me today on middle of first part of February. It looks like it is outside, but if you go outside, it's not. But we're gonna take it. Remember a week ago, I volunteered to be in charge of weather for another week because I saw the weather forecast. So I'm in charge of weather for the next few days anyhow. It's gonna be nice. That's the only way I like to do it. So join me and get outside. It's a little brisk out there, but folks, it's mid-40s, and that's above zero. That's the whole secret here. It's not 20 below. It's like melting all this crazy snow. And speaking of that, I'm telling you, these snow drifts are gone. Now, at the end of my driveway, after all this big snow, the snow plow, of course, the city went by 2-3 times and made it impossible, so the guys came back and did that. But there was a drift over the top of our mailbox. And now it's down to just not about ankle height. So that's how much it has melted for sure. So welcome to halfway to spring. We'll see what happens here. So, also welcome to Senior Talk and Senior Greetings from me right here on Senior Talk, which is the weekly radio program where I have done some homework, hopefully, or need to identify and examine and share, main word share, important and timely information for we and you fellow seniors. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to sit back, relax, get yourself a sandwich and an ice cold root beer, and let's see if we can't cook up something like maybe some information, information that you could use, maybe some fun recollections of past people, places, things, and events. And in those lines, I've got a huge correction for a thing I talked about last week. I got a big correction that we'll find out. Some people called into the station. Molly had the right answer, and I had the wrong answer. So we'll get to the bottom of that. That's right. I'll figure it out all. I've got it all figured out, folks, as you might know. I wasn't happy with that I gave that wrong information. I'll get it all figured out. Well, listen, my name is Rex Brandstatter. I'm 74 years old. And I think that we seniors have a lot on our minds and a lot to talk about. That is for sure. I've been a licensed real estate broker since 1974. So if you just do a little back row math, this 74 from 04 and 24 would be 50 years. So I've been helping people all those times buy homes and sell homes and investment properties and commercial properties. I work with, at this point, I work with seniors. I prefer to work with seniors just like you folks who've been down the trail a ways and want to speak with someone who's hopefully honest Injun, if you will, old saying, and that'd be me. And you can call me with any of your questions on real estate for sure. If you're thinking about moving in the next couple of years, well, give me a call. We can just sit down and talk. Absolutely no cost to you. I don't bug anybody. If you call me, I'll give you my senior line, 319-330-5534. No pressure. I'm never going to call you back unless you want me to. So there's no getting on my email list and I bug you. It doesn't happen. So give me a call anytime about questions and things like that, things we might talk about here on Senior Talk at 330-5534. Call anytime, but we try not to take calls on the air. If I would have taken a call last week with the guy who called in and said I had it wrong, we could have done that, but that's not the way we try to do it here. Well, I don't want to say the word spring because we know what can happen. We've been around here long enough to know if we start counting on this, we'd be just fooling ourselves. And we can think spring, which we're going to get a real good chance to do here in a couple of days because 2 baseball teams, Major League Baseball teams, get to go to spring training in 2 days, I think it is. And the rest of them will be down there next week. Now, nothing says spring better in one's mind than the 2 things. Valentine's Day is in February, and spring training. And, folks, we're a week away from both. So hang in there. We're going to have some fun with all those things for sure. And nothing speaks to me more than spring, and that is spring training. All right, we'll talk about that for sure. So, when the sun is out and the sun is shining like it was yesterday, it just makes you feel better, doesn't it? I mean, it just makes you feel so darn, even if it's colder. Some days if it's cold, but the sun's out, it just makes you feel, well, at least the sun's out there. And as my dad used to say about January sun, he says it's a nice sun, but there's no heat in it. And he was so right. But folks, we are what we are. We're gonna ride this out. We're doing great. We're doing absolutely great. Well, these are some. Here's a comment from me on my opinion in sports that these are pretty special times with the Caitlin Clark and the Iowa women's basketball. Well, that's understatement. You don't need me to tell you that. But I want you to I kind of put these things together. Harken back to any of you who were here in 1939. But even if you weren't, we all have read, heard about, explored, listened to stories about Niall Kinnick and the Ironmen. All right. Now went on to be, and the team both went on to be legends in their own time, and rightfully so for all that they accomplished. Niall Kinnick, of course, won the Heisman Trophy, the Hickok Award, the most valuable player in the Big Ten Award, Phi Beta Kappa, all those things. I didn't get any of those anywhere near any of them. Neither did you, most likely. So that was the bar that we've set. Okay, we've set the bar with Niall Kinnick on being our most outstanding athlete ever. He was at Iowa born, Iowa raised. His grandpa was governor of Iowa, and he's from Adel. He was a real rock solid guy. He ended up graduating from college in Omaha, but because his parents moved over there in high school, but he came to the University of Iowa because that's where he wanted to go. He was not heavily recruited by anybody, but it was narrowed it down to Iowa and Minnesota. And Minnesota was hotsy-totsy stuff back in the 1930s, and they had a big-time coach up there and all big players, and they beat on him to go to Minnesota. But he said, you know what he said? He said, in the end, they asked him why he chose Iowa, who was down in despair in the dredges of the football world. We got booted out of the Big Ten in 1931, for God's sakes. Now, here we are. And now Kinnick comes over here. Well, nobody knew he was going to be that good. He was, 5'8", 160 pounds, soaking wet. But he said, I just felt like maybe I could make a contribution to Iowa, and Iowa needed some players. Well, what a rock solid thing. Well, that's why Caitlin Clark is here. She was recruited by more than just one or two, more than just Iowa and Minnesota. And she could have gone to Iowa State, for one. She could have gone all kinds of places. But she just thought the team mix down here and the facilities and the leadership of the women's basketball team were of her liking. So that's why she came here. Pretty ground level stuff. And she's from the Des Moines area. And so it's another Iowa, assume Iowa bred, Iowa born, Iowa raised, in this case a young lady, and she's here, and she's really, really, there's nothing I can say to add to what she's done, but she's, I guess, a real stud muffin, if you want to go. She's the real deal. You don't need me to tell you that, okay? But here's some homework I've done in my own little pea brain. I'm saying that Caitlin Clark is the equivalent or more than Niall Kinnick. Now, they both have those attributes, Iowa background, Iowa high school, up to a point, high schools, came here with some notoriety, but not the notoriety they ended up gaining. So where does that take us? Well, that takes me to think this. At some point, A, it's a given that they'll retire her number. That's not even an argument. I don't know when. That's not up to me. B, I think this is the kind of thing that in time there would be a statue of Caitlin Clark at the university somehow. We've got one over there for Niall Kinnick. We've got one over there for Dan Gable. And in Niall Kinnick's world, he achieved fame, and they knew about him through a little bit of radio. Those who had radios back then, remember now it was wartime, so people did hover around the radio. So they might have heard Niall or heard about him. There was no television to speak of, and there was no internet, anything like that. There were no sports shows, ESPN, or any of those things like that. So now Kinnick's deeds were usually and almost all in the newspapers. And so West Coast people didn't know much about him. The Southeast didn't know much about him, anything like that. He'd never been on an airplane. He took a train to get to the games. I mean, it was a different world, and rightfully so. Not picking on, that's what it was. So here comes Caitlin Clark with all her abilities, and she has gained fame, and I'm going to say fame and fortune. I don't know that, but I'm sure she's doing okay in the NIL stuff, and she's a spokesman for many groups. I'm saying that the University of Iowa, I have a lot of opinions on this, of course, but I think the University of Iowa would be not well received if for some reason she ended up being an assistant coach or a coach somewhere else. We don't have a coaching opening here now. I understand that. But I'm going to recommend that the university develop and start a job called the Iowa Ambassadorship. And whenever she's ready, she becomes the ambassador for the University of Iowa, and she gets an office over there at Carver. Care if she does anything, if she's even in there. But we've got to retain Caitlin Clark somehow. We've got to retain her in the athletic department. My guess is she'll play NBA for a short period of time. Now, after Niall Kinnick graduated, the NFL wanted Niall Kinnick. That's kind of a natural, wasn't he? Iceman Trophy winner. He played in the College All-Star game in the summer of 1940, where he was the number one vote getter. He was a color picture of Niall Kinnick in a uniform, in a red, white, and blue uniform on the front page of the Chicago Sun-Times. And he was going to be could have been a professional football player. He turned it down because he wanted to go to law school. Now, I don't know that Caitlin Clark would do that. I don't know that. She doesn't have to tell me anything. I'm not sure she's going to come back to play basketball, and I'm not really sure she needs to go on to play professional basketball. I think her career, her opportunities are way larger than the women's NBA. That's where I'm going. I think her opportunities are way bigger than that. Now, maybe she has to satisfy her yearn to always accomplish the next step, which is women's basketball. I understand that. As a competitor, I guess. I don't see that as just me. I don't see it as a long-term thing, maybe a couple of years, and then she really realizes that she's got that out of her system, and now she can go back to being and become Iowa's ambassador. And I think that would be a wonderful thing for her. It would be a compensatory type of thing, obviously. And she's developed this thing where all the young girls, even young boys, even old grandpas, everybody is looking up to Caitlin Clark. So she's got a big burden on her shoulders, and I don't think that burden is going to be relieved by the Women's Basketball Association, NBA, but she maybe has to go there to satisfy her own self. But then I think she'll be back, and I want her to come back to Iowa City, come back to Iowa. I don't want her to be an assistant coach at Purdue or Missouri or anything like that. She belongs in University of Iowa forever. That's just the way it is. So that's just my take. She can go do whatever she wants to do, of course, which she will without calling me. But I'm saying she's on the level and will be as time goes by when she's not here to play basketball anymore, which could be maybe she's done this year, I would suspect. But she never leaves the University of Iowa. All right, that's just me talking there. See what you think. Well, I've had lots of seniors out there doing. I've seen lots of seniors out there doing whatever you guys do, what you women do, and it's just nice to see that. In any crowd you go to, in any store you go to, any event you go to, there's a nice amount of sprinkling of seniors. After all, about 25% of the people in Iowa are seniors. Between 20 and 25% are 65 and older. So we've got a huge segment of our population that are seniors. All right. I want to tell you about this correction, and here it is. It might sound minor to you, but it's a big deal to me because I want to get it right. I work as a part-time thing, volunteer as the Corville historian, and which leads me to be in different history groups and things like that. And last week I had a quiz on what was the home of the original town that housed the world famous stump puller. Okay, where was the stump puller from? And I incorrectly said Stumptown, which is River Junction, which a lot of people never heard of the River Junction, let alone Stumptown. And I was wrong. All right, actually, Molly had that one right. And I gave you some choices of Solon, Lone Tree, or River Junction. And I said River Junction. Now, I actually got that information from another historian who's written several books. I'm not throwing him under the bus. So he and I both have it wrong. I got it wrong because of him. But that was my problem because I did investigate. The home of the stump puller, world-famous stump puller, and for many years, is actually Lone Tree, Iowa, which is east of Stumptown, which is River Junction. Now, I called a Lone Tree historian who will know. He knows all this stuff, and he told me all about it. And manufacturing, there's even a foundry down there where they made a stump puller. It has to be a rather stout. I've never seen a picture of one. I know what today's stump pullers look like for sure, but that's not what those look like. The one today sawed up, so it's a different deal. So they had a foundry and a forge over there. Well, guess what? As the more I thought about it, my great-great-grandfather on my mom's side lived in Lone Tree, and he worked at the foundry over there. He was in on making these things. I looked it up. Yes, he was. I had it all wrong and didn't even realize that my family was involved with the thing. All right, there was a railroad right there. You probably all knew that. There's a railroad that went from over from Nichols over through Lone Tree at Riverside, and the World War I guys got on a train down there. That I know. All right. So it's a big deal. I had it wrong, so that's the story. Now, what did I learn about Stumptown? I learned a couple things. About Stumptown, it got that name not because it had anything to do with the stump with the stump puller, but because at some point, reportedly, a group went over there, or a company went over in that area, and they sawed down a whole bunch of trees, leaving a bunch of what? A bunch of stumps. Well, okay, why did they go there? Well, they took the trees, and most probably walnut trees, because they made rifle stocks out of them. So that would play into the fact that during World War I, the call was out for walnut, and probably made some hickory, probably walnut, and that's what happened over there. Now that's reportedly, all right. But that makes sense. They left a whole bunch of stump. That makes more sense than the stump puller type of thing. It kind of got coagulated in there with the wrong thing. So that even made me more interested in that story when I'm going to explore that. And while I was talking to the Lone Tree historian, my friend Dale, he's more than my friend, he's a family member, Dale, I asked him a question, a nice simple question. I said, did there used to be a dance ballroom in Lone Tree? Now, a dancing and music ballroom in Lone Tree, East Center. Well, the answer was, he said, yes. He said, we had our wedding reception there, which would have been after the war, so which would have been in the 50s, probably early to mid-50s, be my guess. And he said, yes, it was. I said, I have heard that Lawrence Welk played there. He said, Lawrence Welk and those bands, they played there many times as they toured around the country. He said, all kinds of people played out there in Lone Tree. He said it was a big deal. So I'm on to something here. I mean, I'm probably the last guy in Johnson County that knows this, but that's why I like to hear people tell me these things so I can bring it to you. Maybe you have remembrances of that. Maybe your parents or grandparents have remembrances of the big band. I read about it not too long ago. I don't have the name off the top of my head. I'll get there, folks. I'll get there. I'm working on a lot of things. So that's the story. That's my big correction. Happy to do that when I was wrong. Now let me tell you another story this week where I was wrong again, but I came out on my feet. And here's the deal. Not long ago, I went to my shop, and I had the garage door opener. I opened up the door. I had the garage opener on my visor. See if you folks can relate to this. On my visor, and I couldn't get it to work. All right, so I rolled the window down and pushed the button. See, there is an old saying, roll the window down. When's the last time you rolled the window down and everybody's got an electric window? So I rolled the window down, and I did either. I pushed the button, window went down, and I held it out the window, and I got the dumb thing to go up, aimed it just right. Well, lo and behold, what I didn't know was that I lost it. So I'm looking for it the other day, and it wasn't up on the visor. And I thought, well, it must be in my car. It was not in my SUV. I said, well, I must have put it in one of the old cars down at the shop. No, maybe it's on the workbench. No. So I couldn't find it. So now here's what I've done. I've come to the fact that I've lost, in my terminology, misplaced something. And at your house, I don't know what you do, but I can't get over it. When I misplace that keys like that, I have to sit down, recreate where I was, when I thought I was, where I might have been, stuff like that. That's the hard part. So I'm going through this in the middle of the night, and I came to the conclusion that I had it in my car. I had it there. It's either in my car or in my shop. So it's about 6:30 yesterday morning. I'm at my shop for about the third time. I said, it's got to be here. Well, I went down there, went to where I would have put it. I said, well, maybe I put it over here. Just don't forget, Rex, you put it over here type of thing. And of course not, I didn't find anything. So I went back home, and now when I got home, I put my keys down where I always do, and I said, well, here's what I call my junk drawer. So I'm out there unloading that. My wife hears all this stirring around, and she says, what are you doing? Well, I didn't want to really tell her what I'm doing, but she smelled a rat. And here's where it gets sticky, of course. I said, all right, I said, I can't find the garage door open to the shop. She means I lost it. I said, I've misplaced it. And here goes on the edge of World War III at our house, because she said, well, if you would put it where it's supposed to be, I said, you know, I know if I'd put it wouldn't be lost, would it? No. And then the standard question, well, where do you think you lost it? So I went through all that, and she just said, I don't know how you'd continue to do this, because I lost keys not too long ago. Because I said, I'm not here for the lecture, which would be World War III, in my opinion. I'm not here for the lecture. I'm just trying to find this stupid thing. So moral of the story was yesterday, I'm at the shop again. I went through two more cars out there, two more cars at the shop, just to give myself busy thinking they might be there. And as I sat in my SUV, I looked over to the right in the passenger seat, on top of the passenger seat, ladies and gentlemen. But it was crammed over. There it was crammed over to where you buckle in the seatbelt. And I looked at it a couple times, and it was upside down, and on the back of the opener, it's got that metal loop you put on your visor. I was looking at it all the time. There it was. I held it up, and I said, you little imp, kind of the words I use, little imp. And I put it on my visor, and I called my wife. I found it. And, of course, where was it? I told her. She said, well, you idiot, it was on the seat. I said, it was on the seat. A foot from my fanny is where it was. So there you go. She was told me if I put it back. Well, I did now. So that's the story of thing. When you lose things, I can't get over it until I find it. Turn the world upside down. She knows it. She heard the drawers rough. I was, oh God, so happy, and I don't even hardly ever use the thing. I just couldn't find it. So there's another story on Dumb Old Rex, we're going to call it. Well, by a recent account, this is extremely interesting to me. See what you folks think. By a recent account, most recent account, within the last week, by an oceanographer, says that we might have, and he said we might have located Amelia Earhart's airplane. Well, we've heard this before. We've been down this road. We've seen film that they said they showed her on being captured and raised by the natives or the Japanese, World War II, all kinds of things. And History Channel a year ago had a big thing in the middle of winter. I watched it. They showed her a picture of her and Fred. I think the name in a minute here. Anyhow, they're supposed to have landed. They were headed for Howland Island, Howland, Howland Island. And they fell off the radar, and Mayday, they couldn't raise anybody. So anyhow, they think they found it in 16,000 feet of water. How many mathematicians out there? How many feet in a mile? 5,280. 5,280 feet in a mile. So they're roughly 3 miles down. So from wherever you're sitting today, conjure up a place you think is 3 miles from here, and that's how far down it is. So they can't go down. The skin divers can't go down. So they got to go down on those little bitty camera submarine things, not manned at this point, because they showed an image, and they said the image looks like an airplane. Now the image has swept back wings, which hers did not have. But the oceanographer guy says he said this is such a rough. The seas were so rough, and this is an image from up on top. It wasn't an image from down in there. He said we're going back this summer. If that's the case, that could have solved the mystery that I think the biggest mystery that we all have grown up with and all lived through and all still want to know. Whatever happened to Amelia Earhart? Now, who was Amelia Earhart, you might ask? If you recall, she was the lady. She was not a daredevil pilot. She was just a pilot who she wanted to accomplish what she wanted to accomplish, and one of them was flying around the world. And she started down, I think, I got to think to Australia, and she made it to Hawaii, took off from there, and from there, Hawaii, she was headed to Howland Island, and they found this thing 200 miles short, 100 miles short of Howland, Iowa. Okay, isn't that something? So now they're going to go down this wheel. We'll see what happens. Well, that was in 1937. In 1927, Lindbergh flew. He flew from the United States, and he flew from New Jersey to Paris, France, and up over Newfoundland and Greenland and down across there. And he was a world hero. And he was a world hero to the day he died. When he landed over there, it was an absolute mob scene. They mobbed him at Ticker Tape Parade in New York City, and he was the toast of the world. He was invited to meet with the President of the United States. He invited the President of France, the King of England at the time. Everybody, A to Z, world leaders wanted him. And I read a book about that, and he said he went to more luncheons and more dinners in history than he'd ever thought about. And his plane, which Spirit of St. Louis, they made two of them. Actually, they were made in San Diego. They made two of them, and one of them is down in St. Louis, of course, and the other one is I think it's in Washington D.C. So that's what's going on there. So in 1927 we had Lindbergh in 1937. So we'll see what happens. We know what happened to Lindbergh. You know, he died a natural death, and he was a huge hero. And I think that Earhart is a hero in our own minds. And this man says if we can find it, we're going to try to raise it. I don't care if they raise it or not. You know, they found now Kinning's airplane, and the man said he wanted to raise it, and the general opinion was leave it alone, leave Nile alone. And I don't know what the sentiment will be if they confirm this or not about Amelia Earhart. I don't know. I think they all want to know what happened to her. The theory is she ran out of gas. And that's the theory. So we'll see. I thought I might bring that to you. So if you see it in the paper, you let me know. All right. And my dad, as a matter of fact, used to tell me that when he was a kid. Now, he was born in 1919. So in 1927, he would have been 8 years old. And he told me that out in Cornwall, where they lived, they'd hear an airplane going over, which they never did back then in 1920s. They never saw or heard an airplane once in a blue moon. Well, what happened to them when they were kids, an airplane would fly over town, and everybody in town, not just he or his family, half the people in town would run out, including his mom, my grandma, would run out, and they'd all look up, try to find the plane, and they'd all yell, Lindy, lucky Lindy, Lindy, because Lindbergh had just flown from all the way from New Jersey to Paris, France. So that was how was the impact that it had on even local people right here in town. And I can tell you right now that my mom, she's been gone since 2014. Excuse me, 2014. So she was always intrigued with the story too. So we'll see what happens here. So, well, listen, I got a call from a senior in the state of Washington, advising that he made. Here's what he said. He said, when I was in shop class. He grew up in Iowa City. When I was in shop class in high school, I made street numbers for our house in shop class, and he said in 1954. And I was wondering if those numbers are still on that house on Fairchild Street. I said, well, all right, I don't know. Aren't these fun things, folks? I think. So I said, I don't know. I'll go find out. So he gave me the street address, and I went over there, and there was some snow on the ground, but I got up on the sidewalk. I didn't go up on the porch because that's private property, but from the sidewalk, you can take any picture you want in the world. So I stood on the sidewalk with my phone, and I kind of spread out my screen, and I took a picture, and there's the numbers, and I sent it to him. I emailed it to him, and I said, here's what they're, and he said, those are the ones. So the numbers on that house are the ones that he made in shop class at City High in 1954. And he's proud as a peacock to know that. Now, the next story he wants to know if I would go, if he made some new ones, because he has his own shop, if he made some dead ringers of it, would I go ask those people if they'd replace them? And I said, no. He said, why? I said, because those numbers are an integral part of that house. They need to be there. Well, yeah, that's probably true. So, anyhow, he's basking in the sunshine because he made them in shop in 1954, and they're still there today. It's a covered porch, so they've not received any winter weather, and maybe they've been painted over the years. I don't know. Kind of interesting story. I got another call yesterday. I got a call. I didn't know who it was. Answered the phone, and it was a bubbly senior-sounding guy. I hope I'm not telling out of school here. And he said this. I'm so happy. He says, I'm so excited. I wanted to call and tell you that I've got my financial records in order. I said, well, good for you. And he said, yep, I took it. I've heard they talk about it. So he didn't say we, but I'm assuming he meant maybe he and his wife, or I don't know. He said, I've got my family, or I've got my financial things in order. And then he said this. Here's the important part. After he told me that, he said, I am so happy. He said, I am so relieved that I got it done. It isn't even, I can't even tell you. So what he just said was he stewed about it and thought about it and put it on the back burner like you all, a lot of you have done. And he said, once I realized how I was going to do it, how easy it was, he went to his attorney, it sounded like, and he got all done. And now he's so relieved, he's so happy because he's got it all figured out the way he wants it. Doesn't have to rely on anybody else, whatever this is. He's got it all laid out there on what's going to happen when he's goes to the happy hunting ground, and he is so relieved and so happy. So, folks, that's where you too can be. All you have to do is come to the realization that if you don't make a change, something's going to happen that you don't want to happen with your estate, and that's not the way to do it. That's not the way. So I'm going to join with this gentleman. A, thank you for listening. B, thanks for calling. And C, which should be A, congratulations. How's that sound? Good for him. And he's happy about it. So you too can feel that exhilaration if you kindly take it upon yourself to call an attorney, go sit down with them, either update your will and advance directives and the powers of attorney, things like that, or create a new one. Just that simple and not that expensive for sure. Well, thank you, sir. Thanks for giving me a call. Well, a nice senior lady tells me this. I was wondering why the grocery stores don't realize that old people, that's what she said, old people don't need a whole loaf of bread or a whole dozen eggs. She said, I only need one pork chop at a time. I'll bet other seniors think the same thing. Well, they do. We do. Now, I can tell you this, I know you can go to Hy-Vee and buy half a dozen of eggs. I bet you can go other stores, too. I don't know about the one pork chop thing. Here's some of this thing is buy two and freeze one. Yeah, they'll be there in 6 months. They'll still be there. That's what you have to do. You have to learn to do that type of thing. But I understand where she's at. You know, she might want to have a smaller box of this or that, and she can't get it. Well, don't let her go to Costco, for God's sake. Go out to get a thing of ketchup, and you have to buy 10 gallons of it. So anyhow, but I understand where she's at. Half a loaf. You can also freeze bread, folks. Utilize that freezer. And speaking of the freezer, when we were a kid, we had an Admiral TV, and we had an Admiral refrigerator in the 1950s. And the freezer on that thing, opened it up. The freezer was a little door that you opened up. And inside that little dinky freezer, kind of what my dad called it, a little dinky blank freezer, was just enough for 2 or 3 ice cube trays. So he didn't freeze anything back then. But now everybody's got a freezer you can pull out. It looks like a big door you pull out like or open up wide. It's huge. Take advantage of your freezer. And another thing is, when you take advantage of it, use it. Don't let stuff sit in there for 3 years. Oh, look at that. Some people actually are organized enough. Get this. I know it wouldn't be you. Some people are organized enough to actually have an inventory of what they have in there. They might not say in the lower left corner, blah, 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 but it might say we've got 2 chickens we've got 3 pounds of hamburger, blah, 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 blah. That could be in there. I don't know how organized you are. I've never been that organized. I just go by my brain, what I think's in there. I think we've got that, and then lo and behold, you do it, but I want it now, and it's frozen hard as a brick. So use your freezer, that's for sure. So anyhow, I told her about the freezer. Yeah, you're probably right. Anyhow, I just always wondered. Well, there you go. A senior man wants to know, why do we pay property taxes a year behind? He said, I'm paying taxes. He said, I was talking to somebody the other day, and he said, the guy says, taxes are coming up, which they are at the end of March. We all know that. And the guy said, well, I paid the whole year. He says, last September, I paid the whole year. I'm all paid up for the year. He says, now I find out I'm not paid up for 2024. I said, you're right, you're not. So, folks, here's the deal. Iowa does. We do pay what we call in arrears. So right now on your house, if you made a check-in due by September, so you paid that bill. And there's 2 coupons, payment number 1 and payment number 2. So you paid payment number 1 last year. In September, you paid payment number 1. Well, congratulations. That took you up to December 31st of 2022. And then you paid the one we're going to pay now. That will take you up to June 30th of 2023. What? So this one coming up, and we'll talk about down the road here. This one coming up, you're going to write a check. That will take you to June 30th of 2023. So I told that to this gentleman. He said, oh, that can't be. I said, well, it is. I hate to tell you that, but it is. So I said, you and me and everybody else in Johnson County, if you're paid up until when? I just told you, June 30th. You paid coupon number 1 and coupon number 2. You're paid up to June 30th of last year. So as of right now, as you sit in your house, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking right at you, you owe taxes once you paid this next one. You still owe taxes from last July 1 until today. So if you send your pay, you can send it in today if you want. It's just the deadline's March 30th. You don't have to wait for the deadline. We all do. You can send them in today. So if you send it in today, you still owe taxes. You're current. You're up to date till last June 30th. So you still owe like 9 months of taxes. That's just the way it is. Nothing we can do about it. And he said, oh, for God's sake, I didn't know that. And I said, there you go. You learned something the easy way. All right. So I just kind of had a lot of fun because most people don't really understand the tax situation in Iowa. I'm going to tell you this right now, that the tax situation in Iowa for the commercial property owners is in good shape because there's a 10% rollback taxes off of that. They take 10% off of that, which has been a good deal. I own some commercial price, been a very good deal. A lot of us commercial owners think it's great. I don't know. It's got a sunset, but it's not for a while yet. But I want you to know that there's trouble in River City, and trouble in River City is some taxes and how the state has lowered some of those taxes, like commercial properties and the cities. And now the cities are saying, well, we don't have enough money now to not pay our bills, but we can't do this, we can't do that. We've got to cut our budgets. And now the legislative rollback, which a lot of you don't understand, based on millage rates and school districts and things like that, taxing entities, that's going to go down, which is good for the homeowner, which is a good thing for the homeowner. It's been going up for like 7 or 8 years in a row at a minimum, and now it's going to come down. It's going to go from we pay on 0.55060, something like that. It's going to go down to, I think, 0.48 or 0.49 or 0.50. It's going to come down. It's not going to fall out of bed, but it's going to be in the homeowner's side of the game, and not the cities, not the state. So what's going to happen is cities are going to have to cut some things. Cities are going to have to cut some things if they can't do that. They're going to have to say, well, we can't hire this new police officer. We can't get a new truck for the streets and alleys, or the new dump truck, or whatever it might be. They might say, we've got to cut this program, period. Just get rid of this program. They won't be cutting salaries, but they might not hire somebody. It's going to be a cutting thing, which a lot of them aren't good at. We shall see. Keep an eye on that. I am personally of the knowledge that Meals on Wheels, because I have a good friend who's driving for Meals on Wheels, that Meals on Wheels is going strong again, and that is absolutely great news. This is very important for seniors and the families of the seniors who utilize it. Grandma and Grandpa, your mom, my mom was on it for a while, begrudgingly, but then she couldn't live without it. They're going, and Meals on Wheels, it's funded a little differently now, and they got some friendly drivers. And remember, Meals on Wheels, they have qualifications, but if you're a senior, you can get to it. I don't know about other ages who can't get around. I don't know. I believe you have to be a senior, I'm pretty sure. But it's a daily touch. It's more than just delivering a little meal, a clamshell meal of their choice, by the way, sometimes. It's a daily touch where somebody knocks on the door and says, hi, Mrs. Smith, and pretty soon it's, hi, Gretchen, hi, Doris, hi, Bob, hi, Fred. It's a daily touch, and that touch is more than just them seeing a friendly face and hi. It's now a friendly face there to say, hey, Bob didn't come to the door. Or when I was there, Bob wasn't feeling good, and he doesn't want to tell his daughter. There's a line of communication here, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm so happy to hear that. I want you to know that it's time as seniors for us to look out for yourself. You can go take a look in the mirror, and there's the person that's number one. Well, he always looks out for himself, or he never looks out for himself. Don't let that happen, all right? And I'm speaking specifically for your health. And I want you to do, I don't know about do better, I'm not your doctor for God's sake, but do what you can to just to be yourself. And I don't also things in life, I don't want you to leave yourself out. That's very important. I don't want you to leave yourself out on a new refrigerator if you have to have one. A trip to South Dakota to see your sister you haven't seen for 12 years. Load up in the car and go see her, for God's sakes. Call a longtime friend from way back. I did that last week. A kid I hadn't seen since 1964. And I found him on Facebook. Just happened to run it on, saw his name there, and I said, is this Tom, who visited Corville in 1964, his last name? And about 2 days later, yep, it's me. How are you, Rex? Well, I haven't seen him since 8th or 9th grade, and so he lives down in Kansas, and I called him, and he was down and smarter than me. He's way smarter. He's down in Arizona for the winter, way smarter than me. We talked. Now, we only have a 1-year gap. He couldn't remember everything. He visited for 1 year here and went to school here, so it's limited. But it just made me feel good at whatever happened to him. And he wanted to know this. He asked some questions. I asked some questions. We had a good time of it. So we're going to keep in touch a little bit better. Well, it can't be any worse. Whatever how long ago that was, 54 for God's sakes. That's a long time ago. You know, so that was a good thing for me. So I want you to do that. You need to go see your brother, your sister, your friend. Call them at a minimum. do it. If you've lived with those dim lights in the kitchen for so long, I want you to call and have an electrician come out, because those guys, the women who are the lighting studios, they know what they're doing. They can design you some new lights in the kitchen or the bathroom. Quit living on the edge of things like that. You've got hopefully a couple of dollars in the bank. Do something for yourself. You've done all these years, maybe raising a family and this and that, sacrifice. And these aren't big sacrifices. This is just treating yourself. But the most important ones here are something for yourself, whether that's call your sister, your brother, or go see somebody you haven't seen for a long time. Just do it, because you know what? Because we never know what's going to happen. Now, we lost the big country singer yesterday. I don't want to say the wrong name here. I can't remember now. But he passed away. Bill Northey, who actually I met Bill Northey many times. He and I were acquaintances. He was Iowa Secretary of Agriculture one time. Great guy. He went to Iowa State, of course, and he married a lady who graduated from Iowa, so I told him he married up, and he agreed. Anyhow, he's just a nice guy. So that's what needs to happen. I want you kind of to take care of yourselves, folks, and if part of that taking care of yourself is come to the realization that it's time to get off your fanny and get down there and go see a lawyer and sit down and get yourself what I call a senior legal posture. A senior legal posture. That's what you need to do, for sure. Next week, I'll have a little update on myself. I've got something going here. I'll let you know. And next week also, I've got a guest coming next week, which I don't do too often. But this past winter, it's been so cold, I always worry about in the middle of the night. I always say a prayer for my furnace. I don't know about you, but I'm so happy when it's 10, 20 below and I hear that furnace kick on. Thank God it's going. You know, what are you going to do in the middle of the night? So that's what we're going to do. I have a guy come in. We're going to talk about Iowa City, way back. Talk about Iowa City and heating. How do you heat your house, and how do people went about it, and why is it no longer used, and where was the source, and all these type of things. And I'll bet you $1, some of you remember, some of you used this service, maybe your grandparents did, but we're going to have fun, and there'll be just a little bit of senior talk. It'll be senior history talk for sure next week. I'm really looking forward to it, so as long as my guy shows up, if he doesn't, I'll just have to ramble for 45 minutes, which will be no problem either. So that's the story. Take care of yourself. Let's cheer the Hawkeyes on, men and women, and do our best to be ourselves. We'll see you next time. So long.
Consistent quality and dedication to doing it right every time has established Monica's as one of the area's favorite restaurants for decades, and that tradition continues.